In the tense silence of the Cold War, when the world lived under the constant threat of nuclear annihilation and entire cities trained themselves to duck beneath desks at the sound of sirens, a Soviet submarine slipped beneath the waves in 1972 and was never seen again. Its disappearance quietly buried beneath layers of secrecy, denial, and geopolitical fear, because this was not just another patrol gone wrong, but a vessel operating at the sharp edge of superpower rivalry, carrying technologies and missions that neither side ever wanted publicly acknowledged. And for decades, its fate became one of those whispered naval legends mentioned in declassified footnotes, hinted at in memoirs, but never fully explained until now. Because modern sonar has finally revealed something resting on the ocean floor that no one expected to find. And what it suggests forces historians to reconsider everything they thought they knew about underwater warfare during the Cold War. In 1972, the Soviet Navy was aggressively expanding its undersea presence, racing to match and surpass the United States in submarine technology, stealth capability, and second-strike nuclear deterrence. And Soviet submarines were no longer simply patrol vessels, but mobile intelligence platforms, electronic warfare hubs, and in some cases experimental testbeds for classified systems, many of which were rushed into service under immense political pressure, with engineers warning privately that the margin for error was dangerously thin. The submarine that vanished that year was officially listed as conducting a routine training mission, a phrase frequently used by both superpowers to mask operations involving signal interception, undersea cable mapping, or proximity shadowing of NATO assets. And while Soviet officials announced only that contact had been lost due to technical difficulties, the lack of recovery efforts, the absence of public mourning, and the immediate classification of all related documents suggested something far more serious had occurred. For years, Western intelligence analysts suspected the submarine may have suffered a reactor malfunction, a fire, or a catastrophic implosion. But those explanations never quite fit, because no seismic data indicated an explosion, no debris ever surfaced, and no SOS was detected by NATO listening stations that monitored nearly every sound in the North Atlantic and Arctic corridors, leading to an unsettling possibility that whatever happened occurred so quickly and so quietly that the crew never had time to react. As decades passed, the story faded into obscurity, overshadowed by better-known disasters, until advancements in sonar technology fundamentally changed what could be seen beneath the ocean. Because modern multibeam and synthetic aperture sonar systems can now map the seafloor in extraordinary detail, revealing shapes, fractures, and disturbances invisible to earlier generations. And when a joint civilian research expedition began scanning a remote region once known to be heavily trafficked by Cold War submarines, their instruments picked up an anomaly that immediately stood out: a long, cylindrical structure resting unnaturally intact on the seabed, with dimensions matching a Soviet submarine class from the early 1970s, yet positioned in a way that defied conventional accident scenarios. What made the discovery truly unsettling was not merely the presence of a wreck, but its condition, because instead of the twisted metal and scattered debris expected from an implosion at depth, the hull appeared largely whole, with specific sections seemingly opened or separated in a controlled manner, as if the vessel had been deliberately disabled rather than destroyed by pressure. And analysts noticed unusual markings in the surrounding seabed, linear disturbances suggesting external interaction rather than passive sinking. As the sonar data was reviewed by independent naval experts, a chilling theory began to form, one that had long existed only at the fringes of Cold War speculation, that the submarine may not have been lost to an accident at all, but to an unacknowledged underwater confrontation. A silent encounter between rival powers in which something went catastrophically wrong, and both sides chose secrecy over escalation. During the early 1970s, underwater encounters between US and Soviet submarines were far more common than the public ever knew, with vessels tailing each other at close range, testing acoustic stealth, probing sonar blind spots, and occasionally colliding in the darkness. Incidents that were rarely admitted because acknowledging them risked triggering diplomatic crises or even armed conflict. And declassified records confirmed that several such collisions occurred, sometimes causing severe damage that was quietly repaired in distant ports. But the sonar discovery suggests something even more alarming than a collision. because certain structural signatures imply the possible involvement of an external device or force, leading some researchers to revisit once dismissed rumors of experimental Cold War technologies ranging from advanced underwater drones to proximity-triggered deterrent systems designed to disable enemy submarines without triggering open warfare. While there is no definitive evidence that such weapons were deployed operationally, both the United States and the Soviet Union were exploring ways to dominate the undersea domain without crossing the nuclear threshold, and the pressure to achieve superiority sometimes outpaced safety, ethics, and even control. As analysts compared the newly discovered wreck to known Soviet submarine schematics, another disturbing detail emerged: a section believed to house classified equipment appeared to be missing, raising the possibility that something or someone reached the submarine after it settled on the seabed. An idea that sounds like fiction but aligns uncomfortably well with Cold War realities, because both superpowers conducted covert recovery operations to retrieve sensitive technology from the ocean floor, often at extreme depths, using specialized vessels and remotely operated systems that were never publicly acknowledged at the time. If such an operation occurred here, it would suggest that the submarine's disappearance was not merely known, but actively managed, its story rewritten to prevent questions that neither side wanted asked. For the families of the crew, who were given little information beyond vague condolences, the discovery reopens wounds that never fully healed, because for decades they lived with uncertainty, denied even the basic truth of how their loved ones died. And now sonar images show a vessel frozen in time, a steel tomb holding answers that may never be fully released. For historians, the find challenges the comforting narrative that the Cold War remained cold beneath the waves, because it suggests a hidden layer of confrontation where miscalculations could erase an entire crew without leaving a trace on the surface. And for modern audiences, the story is a sobering reminder of how close the world came to disaster, not through dramatic missile launches, but through silent encounters in the dark depths of the ocean, where decisions were made in seconds and mistakes were buried for generations. As more data is analyzed and pressure mounts to declassify remaining records, one thing is clear: the Soviet submarine that disappeared in 1972 did not simply vanish, it became part of a secret history written in steel, silence, and sonar shadows. And what new technology has revealed is not just a wreck on the ocean floor, but a terrifying reminder of how much of the Cold War remains hidden, unresolved, and capable of reshaping what we think we know about the past.